Okay, now we're going to start actually creating something that we can use. I'm going to get rid of this and I'm just going to click here up in the corner and hit delete, and that clears the stage. And I'm actually going to go back and I'm going to show you one that Stacy Goyette created, which is actually kind of cool. Now, if you take a look at it, you notice she has hers divided up into sections. Now, I think that's a very, very helpful thing. If you actually have different sections of your test on different topics, that might be useful because it would allow you to compare, well, let me see, how good did I do in the intro to topics problems versus how good or how well did the kids understand it. I actually spoke that. I really shouldn't have said how well did I do. It's how well did the kids do on the first degree equations problems. All right, what did they understand? What did they not understand? What should they talk about? What should maybe I spend a little bit more time going over? All right, so this is a good way of knowing what it is that your kids did. Now, also, I know sometimes when I get biology exams, I mixed all the questions up. So you might not be able to do this in your particular field, but that's one thing. Now, let's take a look at what we have here. Well, in this section here, we have the students' names, all the kids' names, and the number of the question. And you may notice that in some of these, like first in question 4, they're three parts, A, B, and C. That's going to be very, very helpful when she goes to look because it's possible kids understood part of the question but didn't do the whole thing. Down here to the side, we have totals. Okay, if you take a look over here, these are the totals. All that does is add up all the points the kids got in that section. And then finally, you can calculate the percent the kid got. And then down here at the bottom, it tells you the average number of points kids got on each question. So for instance, question number 1, which is a 3-point question, it might be useful to know. It's like, okay, well, the average grade was 2.8 out of 3. Well, that means most of the kids pretty well got it. Whereas, for instance, question number 3, maybe out of 5 points, the average grade was like 1. Well, that would really indicate that maybe quite a lot of kids did not understand that concept, whatever it was. And then the final thing I want you to look at is this thing, the mode. This is more of a mathy kind of thing that the math teachers use. That tells you what the most common grade on something is. Okay, what number occurs most frequently. Okay, not something I think we really need to worry about. All right, so we're going to set up our book right now. So I'm going to go back to my book. And what I'm going to do is here, I'm going to type in name, because this is where the kids' names are going to be. And then I'm going to put in number 1, tab, number 2, tab. And now that I've set up my sequence, I can drag this over. And maybe this section only has, say, 6 questions. Now, I want you to notice something. You notice how the name, and between here, name is kind of cut off because the column isn't big enough? If I go between these 2 rows and double click, it will snap everything to the correct size. Okay, so here are my first 3 questions. And I'm going to type in whatever the question's value is. Now I'm just making this up as I go along. So maybe the first question is worth 5, the second one is worth 5, the third one is worth 7 points, fourth one is worth 3 points, fifth one's worth 3 points, and the sixth one's worth 3 points. And I'm not sure, but for some reason my font size changed here, so I'm going to take everything and make it 18-point font again. Actually, let's go with, there we go. All right, so there we go. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in a series of names, okay? And so we're going to start off with Jefferson Thomas, or Tom. Okay. And I'm going to take a break from recording because you don't really need to see me put a whole bunch of names in here. But basically, I'm just going to put in a list of students' names. So, okay, so I put in a series of names, all right? And what I've done here is, what I want to do is I want to actually give a sense of how these things are going to work. All right, so first thing I want to do is I want to total up the total number of possible points our students can get. All right, now remember there could be 100 columns here, there could be 100 questions. All right, but I click in this column here, which is H2, and if I hit sigma, that's going to sum all of the numbers that are in front of it, and that's the total number of points my students could have gotten. All right, so I'm going to actually type up here total. Now you may notice I just typed this in and I put in a whole bunch of different historical characters. One thing I do want to do is with this top row, I want to make that bold. By making it bold, that indicates that this is a heading. Now watch what happens when I click on good old Martha Washington, and I'm going to try to put these in order of the kids' names. All right, sorting is, this is the Easter egg. I would assume that you would type the information in order. But if I go to data and sort, you'll notice that it grabs everything, grabs all the data, and I can have the choice of sorting it by either the name column, or I could sort it by column number 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on which one I want to use. So let's sort by name and watch what happens. Well, a couple of good things happened and some not so good things. The good thing that happened is it actually did manipulate the data. And again, that's something I think a lot of people don't understand, is you can do a lot of data manipulation here with Excel. You can move around, you can alphabetize, you can do all sorts of stuff. But the other thing it did, which I didn't want, it took all of my totals and I brought it down here to the bottom, which I did not want. So I'm going to go Edit Undo. And I want to just sort the kids' names. So I'm going to highlight this column, and I'm going to go Data, Sort. And I don't want to expand the section. I just want to sort this, what's in here. And I'm going to say Sort by column A and say OK, and boom, it puts them all in order. All right, which is what I wanted. All right, so one thing I do need to tell you is that it's really hard to manipulate this sort of thing when you don't have the actual data. So I'm going to suggest that once you get to this point, you may want to wait until actually you've graded your exams to do this. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next part. All right, and we're just going to pause for a minute. There is one suggestion I do make. If you're going to use a different spreadsheet for each class, which is probably a pretty good idea, what you might want to do is you might want to actually start off when you set this up, set it up with the largest number of students. Like for instance, if you have a class with 37, okay, well then, which I really hope you don't have a class of 37, but you have a class of 37, put in all 37 kids' names, then you can just copy and paste that, delete that, and fill the kids' names in for the other ones, okay? That way you can use the same spreadsheet over and over and over again. All right, so that concludes this tutorial, and we're going to be moving on to the next.